What family secrets were revealed when you became an adult? Throughout my childhood I was told that my father beat my sister into being mentally handicapped when she was an infant. I didn't find out till I was 23 that my sister was born the way she is. I grew up with a lot of anger and hate towards my dad, all over a lie. I recently got in contact with my dad and we are meeting up later this week. My grandparents won the lottery, a couple million, not sure of the exact number, ended up buying a yacht. Tried to sail it down to Florida and it sank halfway out of New Jersey because my grandfather didn't know what he was doing. They bought 3 houses in NJ and 2 in FL. Sent all my illegitimate cousins to college and 1 to law school. By the time I was born, they had stopped paying for the houses because they had gambled all the money away, so the houses were foreclosed on. My grandfather developed some lung pathology from smoking 3 packs a day. My grandmother killed him by withholding his meds and poisoned him. That part is mostly speculation, but we're pretty sure it's true. They say winning the lottery is a curse. Found out after my grandfather passed that he wasn't my biological grandfather. My grandmother had been raped and became pregnant with my mom, and my grandfather, being a friend of the family, took her in. Best man I ever knew. God, I miss him so much. I did this, though I didn't know my wife before she had my adopted son. It was just recently revealed to me that my parents, who I was convinced could make it through the depths of heck and back and still have a healthy, stable marriage, have been holding it together for the kids this whole time. Most of the kids are grown and moved on, but something's brought the whole situation to a head and my folks decided they'd had enough. My mom opened up to me just last week and started crying, and I've only ever seen her cry at funerals before this. Oh, and my dad has massive depression problems, which he's been doped up on a handful of different medications for decades now to combat it. A highly unsuccessful couple of decades, I might add. So after 30 odd years of marriage, bing bang boom, they're filing for divorce right now. And my mom seems happier than ever while my dad just floats around in his self-contained bubble of obliviousness. Same as always. I don't know how to feel about any of this yet. Whoa, sounds like my family, except for the part that mine was never kept a secret. I grew up knowing about this stuff and watching them scream and yell. Before my father was born, his parents, my grandparents, had 2 children. Then World War II started. Grandfather went to war, and grandmother ended up in German-occupied territory. Being Jewish, they were sold out to Germans by the neighbors, who received grandparents' house and all of the contents as a payment. Grandmother and both children were sent to concentration camp, and the kids died there. She somehow survived. When the war ended, my grandfather reunited with grandmother and learned about what happened. He went to see the people who betrayed his family and killed them. 2 adults and 4 children. He didn't live to see the trial because his health failed from the hardships and injuries of war. My father was born soon after. Sweet Jesus, your poor grandmother. TL. WR. Won't read. My father's biological mother sold him when he was a child. I knew a while ago that my father's mother in Vietnam wasn't actually his mother, but his stepmother. I didn't know anything about my father's biological mother until 2 years ago when his stepmother, whom he considers his mother, died. Apparently my grandfather divorced his first wife because she sold my father out in the market. When my grandfather found out, he had to go and find the family that bought my dad and pay to get him back. When he got back home, my father's biological mother was peeved that my grandfather spent money to get my father back and my grandfather divorced her. My grandfather then remarried the woman who my father considers his mother. She always treated him as if he were her own. I found out about this from my great aunt. She only agreed to tell me this story if I agreed to never ask my father about it. It still hurts him terribly. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. What's messed up is that apparently this woman is still alive, living in the same village as my grandparents did, and I might or might not have met her. Supposedly, my father went to visit her and gave her money. God knows why. Oh, and also, I found out my father's sister isn't his biological sister. My grandparents, biological grandfather and step-grandmother, adopted her. She actually has a twin. Her biological family couldn't afford to raise 2 more children, so my family adopted one of the twins. I didn't know about this until my aunt got married and her twins showed up to the wedding. While that is a seriously fricked up story, at least you know that your grandfather is grade A certified awesome. A few years before my mother met my father, she had a boyfriend who hit her at a party, so she hit him back and broke his nose. LOL. My great granddad was married to 3 different women, who all mysteriously disappeared, as in nobody ever saw them again. Oh. I recently learned that before my parents met, my father proposed to another woman who refused him because he was a farmer. My parents have been together since they were 19-20, so I would have never guessed one of them could have had something as serious with someone else before getting together. Close enough. I still don't know who played Santa one Christmas when I was a kid. Everyone refuses to tell me and continues to insist that he was real. I'm 20 now. I don't think I'll ever get an answer. I figured it all out when I was 10. I noticed that Santa smells a lot like my dad when he's drunk. That I was in fact dropped on my head as a child, and apparently when we were living in the Philippines, my parents used to enjoy going out to bars and didn't want to leave myself and my little brother behind, so they would hire prostitutes to drive us around on the little trikes. Apparently we had fun though. My parents set me up with since before I can remember. My dad was always the designated spider killer. A few years ago he told me that he learned to always say that he got the spider, even when they got away. Betrayal. My mother got her and my dad into 6 figures of credit card debt. We found out when my dad tried to co-sign my college loan. He got a call, at work, from a credit bureau asking why he ever thought he could co-sign a huge loan with tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid bills. I will never let anyone handle my finances but me. Our family went through a similar ordeal a few years back. All I can say is, my father is a forgiving man. After I turned 18, my grandmother, totally out of the blue, announced to me that the reason my uncle lived in Costa Rica was because he has fled the US after getting caught growing tons of marijuana on my grandparents' roof. Rather than being arrested, he just bailed and has lived there ever since, selling surfboards. Found out my dad has been gay his whole life when I turned 18 and only married my mother after being pressured into being straight by his parents. Needless to say they were divorced but stayed together for about 10 years. When I was around 5 years old I had a birthday party. A friend of my father came and asked me what I wanted for a gift. I told him I wanted a racetrack with cars. He snapped his fingers and another man who was with him left and came back 30 minutes later with like a $1,000 set. My parents forced me to give it back. I found out later on the man was a recruiter for the mafia and they were trying to get my father to do some things. All I can picture now are mafia members wandering around Toys R Us. My grandfather died a few months ago. The next time my wife and I visited my grandmother, she sat me down and told me something I never expected. She said that my grandfather's older brother had in fact committed suicide with a handgun over a breakup with his girlfriend, instead of the whole story about losing touch with him over the years. My grandfather had always been a very emotionally withdrawn and internalized man. The story goes like this. He came home to a note on the front door written by his brother essentially stating, "I'm going to commit suicide with a handgun at this location." My grandfather was on the track team in high school and had numerous commendations and awards from track meets for just about everything to do with running fast in the shortest amount of time. Well, he ran as fast as he could to the location his brother said he would be at. He got there right when his brother pulled the trigger to his head. Yeah, was never expecting that, and it made the way my grandfather acted all his life make quite a lot of sense in hindsight. He never really got over that. That's definitely something that would stick with you throughout life. My dad was arrested for assault when my mom was pregnant and was only let out of jail for the day when she went into labor. After he died of old age I was told that a good friend of the family who used to play with all the neighborhood kids and have them over to his house was a child molester and all the parents knew at the time. My siblings and I escaped unscathed. A cousin wasn't so lucky. Brief summary of the situation. In my early 20s, my grandma passed away from cancer and my grandpa passed shortly thereafter, leaving the house and everything they owned to me. My dad was left out of the will on purpose. After taking care of the funeral arrangements, my mom and I began the arduous task of sorting through everything in the house. On the second day of sorting through everything, we start to find old picture printouts, keepsakes and whatnot in small boxes. They started out nice enough. Secret recipes my grandma had stashed away. I recall the delicious meals my grandma used to cook for me whenever I visited as a kid. Pictures of my grandma as a younger woman with her previous husbands during her travels. ETM. I recall stories that my sweet old grandma used to tell me about her travels with her previous husbands. In all, I adored my grandma and held her on the highest pedestal. Looking through all of her old collections was a nice trip down memory lane with her. Then we find this one box. I didn't know what was coming. I open it up. Oh, more pictures. Cool. Wait, what's this? There's nude people in these pictures. In some of them, nude people having sex. Who are these people? Oh god. Is that? Oh god. Grandma. Yeah, I found my grandma's old personal pee collection. My mom picked up the pictures to look at for herself when I threw them on the ground. Backed off and had the look as if I'd seen a ghost. My mom thought the discovery was pretty hysterical. Mind you, this was her mother-in-law. In hindsight, I guess it was pretty funny, but it definitely forever changed my view of my grandma. TLDR. My view of my grandma was forever changed. Life lesson. Always have a backup plan to have a friend destroy your personal pee collection if when you die, so your family doesn't have to discover it. Oh, and if you wanted something juicy, I found out in the past year that my parents, who have been happily married for 25 years or so I thought, have been engaging in an open relationship for 5 years or so. That backfired when my mom fell in love with a man 15 years younger than she. I found out they were hooking up when she coyly admitted that they had sex in my bed while I was away for the weekend. Needless to say, I moved. My parents are now separated and my dad lives 2 hours away while my mom lives in the house he owns and still pays the bills on. This also means that my dad pays the bills on stuff that's in his name but that I pay for myself, like car insurance and property taxes. My mom takes this money from me and pockets it to spend on her hillbilly boyfriend instead of giving it to my dad. He knows she does this. If I were you, I'd nip that crap in the bud immediately. Just cause she's your mom doesn't mean she gets to rip you off, change insurance companies, sell the property, etc. Tell her if she ever wants to talk to you again to stop ripping you and your father off. Seriously, frick that crap. That before my aunt became a nun she was engaged to a guy who turned out to be a child molester and a rapist. He must have done some weird crap to my aunt too, but she never talks about it. Apparently, in the 70s, he asked my uncle, my aunt's brother, if he would be interested in swapping between his girl, my aunt, and my uncle's wife. He also wore rubber gloves everywhere. MHHH fingerprints. I'm not sure when this was revealed to me, but I learned that my mom was raped by her mentally retarded cousin when she was a teenager. She's extremely well adjusted, considering. I'm not trivializing rape at all, but being raped doesn't have to mean a person becomes forever damaged. My grandma got pregnant at 17 and didn't tell my grandpa because she didn't think they would last as a couple and didn't want to force him into marriage, so he went into the Marines. He didn't find out until 2 weeks after my oldest aunt was born. I grew up thinking we had a perfect nuclear family. The Rents were very loving, very supportive, very religious, and sent us to very conservative Christian schools. We went to church on Sundays and Wednesdays. We ate breakfast and dinner together every day. Mom and dad seemed very much in love and very happy. After dad died in a skydiving accident, I crap you not, mom loses it, becomes very depressed and very, very angry. A few years later, she tells my brothers and me that dad had been cheating on her throughout their marriage, and as of his death, he had been supporting his latest mistress and her daughter. He even bought the mistress new pair of knockers their credit card. Mom had to pay off dad's mistress's breasts with his life insurance money. We also learned that my dad had been in therapy for his sex addiction and his therapist had recommended skydiving as an alternative to stopping. TLDR. Dad had a wandering penis, took up skydiving, died, and left mom to pay for mistress's implants. My oldest uncle was actually the child of an unknown abusive first husband of my grandma. She never told anyone his name, and the knowledge of who he was died when she did. When my mom was about 5 or 6, a teenage kiddo with developmental problems, retarded back then, attacked her and slammed her head in the sidewalk, giving her a concussion. The same uncle from above killed the kid and buried him in the desert. Growing up I had 3 grandmas. It turns out one of them wasn't actually a grandma. She was just a mistress of my grandpa that everyone in the family really liked, so we adopted her. There are a bunch more, but it would be hard to get into specifics without revealing too much. I learned that I was born from my mother cheating on her husband at the time. She did, however, marry my father. When I was 4 years old, I was the ring bearer. I learned that my sister slept with many guys when she was younger, for all of the classic reasons. I learned that my other sister did, and does, a number of drugs. I learned that my father used to beat the crap out of my brother and another sister. He also started seeing my mom because my 2 sisters, who previously were not related and just friends, wanted to get my mother and my father together. I feel that's a little complicated, so I'll retell it like this. Mother is married to first husband, father is divorced. They do not know each other. Both have daughters. Daughters become best friends. Try to hook their parents up. It works. Later, I am born. I learned that my aunt is schizophrenic. Most males in my family were alcoholics. And even if I am able to survive mental disease and freaking up, my best hope is probably to die of cancer. I will not live into old age. Not with that attitude, you won't. I learned that my dad was fired from a job for sexual harassment when we were kids. I thought he had just been laid off at the time. When my grandparents applied for a marriage license, their birth certificates were required. My grandmother saw hers for the first time and discovered that the woman who raised her was really her aunt and that her real father was a married man with a family in a different part of the country. My dad knows what marijuana smells like because he used to get high, cut class, and go surfing. Not because that's just one of those things that you know when you get to be my age. My brother told me he'd only started smoking in college, but later admitted he'd started smoking in high school. My aunt always thought I was a lesbian, and was surprised as all heck when I got married. Not married now. She told me this after I came out to her as bisexual. My mother had her son at the age of 15. Much younger than I was led to believe. I'm adopted and my adoptive mom was 22 years older than my dad, so technically, my brother is older than my dad. When I was a kid, my grandfather lived with my family. One day he went for one of his usual walks around the block and didn't come back for a few hours. It got dark and everyone started to panic. Neighbors and police came to help look for him. Eventually they found him in the woods not far from home. He had gotten lost, fell on broken glass, and luckily someone found him in time before he bled out. He wasn't allowed to leave the house without someone with him to ensure that he doesn't get lost again. Many years later I overheard from my mother's conversation with extended family that my grandfather didn't get lost at all. The day before he left, he asked me what was in those woods, and I told him it was a dark and awful place that was easy to get lost in. He wandered into the woods, found the broken Coke bottle, and slashed his wrists up proper. TLDR. Family tells kid's grandfather is senile to cover up suicide attempt. My mom and dad were both previously married. My dad got a girl pregnant in college and was forced into an expensive Catholic wedding his parents paid for. When the girl had a miscarriage 3 days later, my dad got an annulment and moved out the next day. My mom got married to move out of her parents' house. She was married to an abusive man who destroyed her personal belongings because he was angry that she was employed and made more money than he did. She ran away and filed for divorce. My parents have been together for at least 30 years, so I guess they finally found happiness after all that. Whoa, that's a pretty epic family secret, but it's pretty romantic too. I'm glad they found each other. Once I moved out and started living as an adult on my own, my family opened up one at a time. Started with grandpa leaking secrets, cousins, aunts, etc. Now before moving out I was the black sheep of the family because my dad was an only parent, partier, drug abuser, biker, trucker, etc. And I, by association, didn't get the easy ride. thus being overwhelmed with joy when I found out this. 6 out of 10 first cousins are in therapy for many issues. I am the only cousin grandkid that has graduated college. Found out I was pushed to work at 13 to make money for a bond my dad needed help with paying. When I was 13 I was told it was to keep the lights on in the house. That was a glorious convo. Let me tell you. 2 cousins were adopted and neither of them know. Now 10 and 13 years of age. I thought I was the crazy one. Then realized after hearing all of the drama I was better off on my own. So the crazies in the family have made it easy to detach. Congrats on the college bit. I was born in the United States and my parents are both immigrants, and after a ton of research I found out that my grandfather was one of the most important political person working in the background of my parents' native country. He personally knew movie stars and amassed an incredible wealth that I haven't even told my aunts and uncles about, all 9 of them, because they would just fight over it like everything else. I've been hiding the secret from my family and only my grandmother is aware of it. My grandfather was also my best friend. We were alike in every way and I don't want my stupid family fighting over something like this. Cool, your grandpa sounds like a very interesting guy. My parents told my brother this when he turned 18, and then my brother told me this when I was 14. Today we're somewhere in the range of middle class, but my dad revealed that 25 years earlier he lived in a homeless shelter. He knew 3 languages but couldn't speak English because he's never been to America before. He's fluent in Vietnamese and French because he grew up in Vietnam when it was a colony, and Japanese because he went to study abroad there. English was the last language he learned. Prior to 1975, my father was studying in a Japanese college because his own father wanted to make sure he got a good education. Grandpa was actually one of the wealthiest Vietnamese landowners at the time, and he sent his 8 kids all around the world to study to become doctors and engineers to bring back to Vietnam and make it a better place. But the communists had succeeded in taking over southern Vietnam before all of his kids finished their education. The communists took everything that my grandpa owned except the manor that he lived in. All funding that my aunts and uncles received was cut off, including my dad's. Without any money left, my dad left Japan with nothing and moved to America in Washington, D.C., where he lived in a homeless shelter and was essentially a refugee. I visited the manor before, where a few relatives still live in. The giant pond was murky and the place was just like Grey Gardens all over again. It's sad to see my family history go from being super wealthy to being stricken with poverty. This explains why my dad has always had a pure hatred for the color red. I grew up near the DC Vietnamese community, and I remember that they had a demonstration against normalizing trade relations with Vietnam when that happened 15 odd years ago. The unbelievable and soul-crushing debt my family had been playing off to all our relatives and family friends. Hands down the worst revelation I have ever had. It happened the summer where my father lost his job and my mom started asking me to pay the minimums on their credit cards. I saw the amounts due on those dozen or so cards and my heart sank to a place I did not know existed. I yelled at my mom for not asking me for help earlier. She said my dad and her did not want to burden us kids. Yeah, debt is brutal. It's such a shame. My mom got into some relatively small debt trying to raise us and I found out and was just like, crap mom, we didn't need all this stuff. We really didn't. Was happy that I could make enough money to wipe her debt clean. I hardly make anything but it was worth it. My grandmother was married to a man before my grandfather. He went off to the war and never came back. Assumed Kia. My grandfather was in World War II as well, and had all his teeth knocked out by a Nazi while they were clearing out a building and the Nazi was hiding behind a door. So my grandfather got all new teeth, and the Nazi got shot a bunch of times. A happy ending for all non-Nazis involved, I'd say. I was born when my mother and father were 17 and 18, respectively. They didn't get married until after my younger brother was born when they were 21 and 22. I've known for quite some time, since probably around 14 or 15, that there was a period of time between my birth and me turning 2 that my parents were split up. However, when I was 23 I learned that not only were my parents not together during that time, and not only did they date other people, but that my mom was actually engaged to another guy. He was apparently kind of an butthole and a drug dealer, and as such there was a short custody battle over me that resulted in my paternal grandparents being my legal guardians for a month before my mom dumped the guy for generally being an ashat. The guy my mom was engaged to, by the way, now one of the artists for Magic: The Gathering. That my father had been married once before, and that my family is apparently very wealthy, but no one in the family thinks they need to use that money to live like stereotypical rich people. That is, a big house, bunch of cars, etc. Even after learning this, nothing changed. We live life normal and I don't let my family pay for anything. 24 and in college with part-time job, they taught me how to earn and appreciate my own money. You can't buy work ethic. I learned my grandma ships pot through UPS and thinks that it's okay because UPS is owned by the mob. So, I guess that was two things I learned there. This same grandma was the only madam for her small town while my dad was growing up, which explains why he hates going to visit. I've had a lot on my mind. Grapes. Mafia ties. My grandfather started out as a whiskey runner. My uncle committed tons of felonies and lots of fraudulent activity. Went to jail. Got hepatitis C from needle drugs, and got an 18-year-old girl pregnant, about 4 years younger than me at the time. Also, my second cousin on my mom's side killed her kids in the bathtub. Edit. Oh. And my cousin tried to commit suicide by running in front of a train and spent several months in a mental institution. Found out at 18 my grandfather wasn't my biological grandfather. My reaction: oh, well, doesn't really matter. He is still my grandfather to me. Honestly, that my family had substantial wealth. Never had a clue until I was old enough that I had to take action on legal issues associated with it. 21 years old. My grandfather told me he used to grow pot out on the farm and smoked it every day. Best thing he told me was, now imagine this spoken in a thick Slavic accent: don't ever smoke the fucking roots. No. I ran out of the conoply and chopped some of that up. Goddamn few puffs and didn't know where the heck I was. Threw that thing out the fucking window. Jesus Christ. When my parents found my quarter lb of pot back in 2005, they said they flushed it, but they really gave it to my uncle who was dying of cancer. They just told me about a year ago. RIP. It's almost Robin Hood-ish. Not really a family secret, but around 20 or so I learned that my parents met in December, got married on Cinco de Mayo, and I was born on the 6th of October. They were 19 and 20. I had always known how young they were, but not that they had known each other for a few months before the pregnancy. It made my childhood make so much more sense. My mom's parents always had a bug up their butt about my dad, and my parents had several rough patches. I don't know how they managed to stick it out, but they did. That my birth mother actually wanted a relationship with me, but gave custody to my dad when I was 2 because her fat prick of a husband didn't want me around. I had always been told she never wanted me, and still to this day barely know her from a stranger on the street. My Aunt Dottie used to be a man, and that my grandmother is not my mom's real mom. I found out when I was 18 that I had a whole other family I never knew about. Weird thing is they all knew about me. My mom gave me tons of birthday Christmas cards from my real grandmother that she had been hiding since I was little. I wonder how much money you saved from that. Our family trust contains much more than a 5,000-acre farm and a house. Also, after my grandparents' generation passes, I will be the only person left that has not claimed my share or been a retard and lost my claim. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.